You are watching Germantown Municipal Television, your source for everything Germantown.
Hello and welcome to Law Talk on Germantown Municipal Television. My name is Vince Perryman. I'm a local attorney with the law offices of J. Vincent Perryman. Each month, Law Talk focuses on a wide range of legal issues and topics. On today's show, we'll discuss sexual harassment in the workplace. With us now is attorney Maureen Holland of Holland and Associates. Maureen, thanks for being on the show today. And this is a hot topic, sexual harassment in the workplace, and it seems like from so many people's questions about it, nobody exactly knows what it is anymore.
It's complicated. I think there's a general sort of standard definition that certainly lawyers use when talking about and thinking about sexual harassment in the workplace and how to deal with issues and problems that arise. And that is, are you in a work environment where you are subjected to unwanted conduct by someone else, usually of a sexual nature, so jokes, touching, requests for sexual favor, that is sufficiently, and the special term is severe or pervasive, that affects your job? So is it serious enough kinds of things going on in your work environment, or things that maybe aren't as serious but that goes on a lot in your work environment? And is that affecting your job? And it doesn't have to be just to you as an employee. So you might be sitting next to or in a workspace with someone who is being sort of targeted, if you will, and being a victim of sexual harassment. Mm-hmm. And what is happening that you see going on is so bad that it's affecting you and your job. So that can also be enough. So that's sort of the general idea. And from there, depending on your circumstance or what you're seeing or experiencing, there are lots of ways to look more carefully, with a magnifying glass about all these pieces to figure out, is this the kind of work environment that is bad enough that the law is going to step in and help you deal with? Or is this a situation that, although bad, the law might not help you, but your company might help you or your employer might help you? So it might not meet the legal standard, but it might be bad enough that the company is going to correct it or take some steps to correct it.
Okay, so if I'm hearing right, it's not just codified as to what it is. There may be company policies or office policies that would also come into play. Right.
So sexual harassment stems from the idea of sex discrimination, that someone is being targeted because they're a woman or because they're a man. So it generally stems from that idea, and then the law has developed over time as we have more and more understood the problems and the difficulties of having offensive or abusive work environments. Mm-hmm. The law, though, as it has developed, has sort of had some definitions or concepts that we have been following as lawyers, but sometimes it's a little bit harder to follow that, or maybe it's not a kind of a problem that the law's going to help, and therefore companies trying to help their employees and also defend themselves from potential lawsuits have created policies that employees can use to stop bad work environments. And so usually the first line of defense for someone who's being victimized by someone in the workplace in a sexual harassment way, they're being harassed, maybe jokes, maybe they're being inappropriately touched, is the policy that the company has or that the employer has that says that is not okay, and if you're the one experiencing this, here's the process that you can go through to report it and hopefully stop it.
Yeah, and it seems like right now, what I hear from several people when they cut on the TV and you hear about someone else that has been fired or suspended from their career in the limelight on TV,
Yes.
a lot of guys that do this sort of work,
Right.
that, some people are like saying, but it's not proven that they've done anything. So really that's when it comes down to, it's just the company policy of saying, hey, if it looks more likely than not, or, how do those policies work in that sort of situation?
So the policies usually set up a process. If you're a victim, the company policy or the employer's policy oftentimes says, go report it to HR or go report it to personnel, go report it to somebody whose job it is to look into this. Then normally the next step is an investigation. So the company does look at what happened or what the employee says happened, and then does some inquiry. Mm-hmm. Maybe there are text messages, maybe there's even video of things if the company has cameras. Maybe there are other witnesses who have seen it, or maybe there are others who have reported it before. Mm-hmm. And the company then makes an assessment, is this happening? And if this is happening, what do we do? So generally there's a process. My experience as a lawyer is the vast majority of women who say this has happened are truthfully saying this has happened. Mm-hmm. It's not really something that women or men, it could be a man who is subjected to sexual harassment, make up. Just not normally what happens because the consequences are so severe. If you're found to have made it up, you're fired. I think it's really generally that's going to happen. Mm-hmm. So most people want their job and they just want to go to work and not be harassed, bothered, felt to be intimidated or belittled because they're a woman or because they're a man. Mm-hmm. And that the law is designed to stop that and the policies are designed to stop that.
Yeah, and I think we've got just a little bit of time left in this segment of it, but if it's a small office setting or whatnot, and there may not be a policy or an HR, how does that process generally work?
So there are issues and challenges when it's a small company or a small employer, because the federal law, for instance, isn't going to protect you if you're in a work environment with less than 15 employees. Okay. And in Tennessee, for instance, the state law on sexual harassment isn't really going to protect you if you're in a work environment with less than 8 employees. There are ways to challenge those bad work environments, but it generally involves another area of the law, not sex discrimination law, but it involves tort law. So you have remedies for something we call intentional infliction of emotional distress. Or if somebody improperly touches you, that would be a civil battery. So there are laws that will protect you. It is a little more complicated, and it's not as straightforward.
Okay, and that's a good spot to stop this one. When we return, we'll continue our discussion about sexual harassment. Please stay with us.
See on page 4 that the projections need to be tornado next Thursday.
Seriously? Thursday? Can't do that.
This is really inconvenient.
I have yoga that day.
I have no time for this.
So.
I can't do Thursday, but I can do Friday.
Disasters don't plan ahead. You can. Talk to your loved ones about how you're going to be ready in an emergency. Don't wait. Communicate.
We'd do anything for kids. Yet 1 in 6 children in the U.S. struggle with hunger. Help end childhood hunger near you. Learn how at feedingamerica.org.
are watching Germantown Municipal Television, your source for everything Germantown.
Welcome back. I'm Vince Perryman, and you're watching Law Talk. Joining us on our show is attorney Maureen Holland of Holland and Associates. We're discussing sexual harassment in the workplace. So Maureen, before we took our break, we basically had laid out, that it's the policies and the laws that form this area and what to do if you were in a sort of a small setting that, it may be more of tort law than is something under sexual harassment in the workplace. Now, as far as if somebody feels they're a victim, what I hear so many times are, well, I don't want to come forward because there may be retribution. I might not advance as much at my whatever company. So what's kind of the process if somebody thinks that this is going on, or that what do they need to do?
Right, so generally there are two things that are really helpful. One is talk to somebody who understands sexual harassment law. So that might be an employment lawyer, whether you pay to go talk to someone or whether you take advantage of clinics that are put on, it's certainly in Memphis, periodically go to a clinic and get information. So that's, I think, first and foremost important. But the most important thing, I think, is to get it to stop. Because every day you go to work and you're subjected to this bad situation, this sexual harassment, it generally manifests as, I now don't want to go to work, I feel sick to my stomach to go to work, I can't sleep, I am trying to take time off and get doctor's notes because I'm so depressed about it. So the real focus often for lawyers is to try to have the employee report it in a way where it might stop. And if you're not getting any help by reporting it to your company, or if you if it's severe enough that you might be contemplating legal action, then you're going to likely want to report it to an agency, a governmental agency. And here in Memphis, we have the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, where you can go on Union Avenue and report if you are being subjected to sexual harassment, if you meet the criteria of having at least 15 employees in your job environment. And you probably should go and report it, because if you feel that you haven't reported it because you're going to get in trouble, or you're going to lose your job, or you heard about someone else who reported it and they lost their job, sometimes it's nice to at least take advantage of a free process that we have by going and reporting it and letting the EEOC, if it deems it really sufficient, they can do an investigation, and that can provide some protection to the employee. So you're trying to stop it, and you're trying to get the employee some protection. I think what I see in the press with certainly a lot of these sort of famous people who are now being pointed out as having abused often women in the workplace, some of those reports are from some time ago. And it's not, I think what I'm seeing as a lawyer is a tremendous cultural change, where it had been the case where I would talk to folks who were victims, and they might not even be the first person I have spoken to from that work environment who are being victimized by someone in terms of sexual harassment. And the company would look into it but never find in favor of the women, always agree with the man. Oh, it didn't happen, it's not true. Deny it. It can't be true. We can trust these women in terms of their job, and many of these women have jobs that are important, and you have to be trustworthy to do the job. So the company trusts them to do their job, trusts their opinion and judgment on the entire scope of their job. But when they came forward and said, oh, and I'm being sexually harassed, the company said, oh, that can't be true. And what I'm seeing now is that change of attitude by the companies who are saying, if we have more than one person coming forward, or if we have one person coming forward that this person we trust, we're going to have to give some reliance on what she's saying.
Why do you think there's been that change?
I think it's because enough women are reporting it,
Okay.
coming forward, and it's getting the press that it needs, and it's getting the response from the companies that who are modeling the behavior for other companies in saying, we are not going to tolerate this. This is not okay.
Yeah, because that's what I've always wondered with it is, it's okay, because it's, well, if you, the whole tipping point of everything,
Yeah.
how you get to the point where you have a cultural shift.
Yeah.
That seems where we're at,
I think so.
you know.
I think it's not just the companies who are modeling good behavior by saying, we don't care if the harasser is a very important person in our company. That behavior is unacceptable, and we are going to take steps to stop it. And we're not going to allow a situation where the women in this work environment are treated badly because they're women, or subjected to unwanted touching, or subjected to jokes, or subjected to requests for sexual favors just because the harasser has historically been someone who has brought the company money, or someone who has brought the company positive fame. And I think that modeling, company after company, plus now, as we see in Congress, our Congress saying that is not acceptable. And now with our Senate and elections as they are happening, for instance in Alabama, that we can't have, we don't want as a public our senators to be individuals who treat women this way.
Yeah, just our presidents.
Well, that's. I think that's really getting some press right now because the women who have alleged that they were sexually harassed by our president are coming back and talking again to the press, saying we really want to be heard. I think better than we had been heard before. So we will see what happens there.
Well, and I think as we see the approval rating drop into the 20s, then there's probably more likelihood of action. It's kind of my, but that gets us off in the weeds.
Yeah, I mean,
Totally
I think that as we see Congress and the Senate grappling with what to do with their members who have been harassers, and coming to some process and putting some process in place, I think that that's going to be an additional shift that that if the Congress, our Congress can't do it and our senators can't do it, then certainly our president can't do it. If our executive officers can't do it, then our leaders can't do it. So I think that's the modeling, and I think we're just in that process.
Okay.
And we'll see what happens.
Yeah, so it's time for a break.
Okay.
When we return from our break, we will talk more with Maureen about sexual harassment in the workplace.
Oh, emojis! I thought the conversation just got dumber.
Ugh, internet trolls, just ignore them.
I like you just the way you are.
I believe in you!
She's a hugger. Give her a squeeze.
Help up the hand.
Ah, there you go.
Thanks, mate.
You're killing it, Jane!
You are watching Germantown Municipal Television, your source for everything Germantown.
Welcome back. With us now is Maureen Holland. We're talking about sexual harassment in the workplace. So in our first two segments, we covered basically what the law was, Maureen, and then kind of what to expect if you think or what to do if you're a victim.
Right.
And I'm thinking about those that this comes up all the time where they were given some severance and signed a non-disclosure agreement.
Yeah.
And they feel like their voice can't be heard now with the Me Too movement and things like that. Is there anything that they can do?
I think that's certainly a complicated question. Certainly I've represented women victims who decided they did not want to pursue a lawsuit, or they did not want to pursue the process that was available to them, and instead they were willing to accept some money, that's often to move forward with their lives and try to spend some time recovering and then find another job. And it's not uncommon that those kinds of settlements might have included a non-disclosure agreement. That is, the victim is prohibited by contract from ever talking about what happened, and some of those specifically say you cannot talk to the press. Some of those also might say that if you do talk to the press, there are severe consequences, including that you owe back all of the money or even more money. And I think that is a problem, but I think for those individuals, they can go back to their lawyer or to a lawyer, and that lawyer can review the non-disclosure agreement and look at it and see if there may be some options available. I think that person also, though, it can go and talk to the EEOC and at least explain that they have a non-disclosure agreement and see if the EEOC is interested in that information, because the EEOC views itself as not being prohibited from investigating. So, and that information, although that person may never get any money, and maybe that person can never go to the press, that information may be helpful to other ongoing investigations that the EEOC is doing. But I think before they even go to the EEOC, going and talking to their attorney who did the agreement, or so that lawyer might reach out to the other lawyer that they had entered into this agreement to see if there has been a cultural change in the company. And going to the EEOC, I'll just note, is free, and is there's a process there, there's some paperwork, and there's a person to speak to about the situation if you can't afford an attorney.
Yeah, so we've talked about going to the EEOC and making a report. How does the entire process with the EEOC work?
Well, it's up to them to investigate, but if you want to pursue a case under federal law, what is known, there's a federal statute called 42 U.S.C. 2000E. That specific statute has some requirements, and those requirements include that you go to the EEOC, tell them what happened, and if the EEOC wants to investigate, it can. If it doesn't want to do any kind of an investigation, that's fine, but they give you a piece of paper, it's called a right to sue, or notice of rights, and you have to have that piece of paper to file a lawsuit. Okay. So that's why it's really important to go there, and there are time limits, so you can't just wait 2-3 years and think you can still pursue this. There's some time limits. In Tennessee, it might be 300 days, depending on your specific circumstances, to go and make this report.
Okay, yeah, and that's always, a lot of people, first, this is a very touchy subject, and people are like, okay, am I going to lose my job? Am I not going to lose my job? How am I going to feed myself? How am I going to feed my family, take care of this and that? So everybody's always worried about it, and I always think it's very helpful for people to actually understand the process in order, because it's not as scary if you know kind of how this works.
Right, it's a very sensitive topic, and most of the victims that I speak to are extremely distressed and worried that they maybe don't want to go alone to the EEOC because it's such an emotional topic. Yeah. And maybe there are lawyers who can help. There are certainly lawyers who do what I do who can be of assistance, but you can always bring a friend with you or a family member with you. You don't have to go alone and report what has happened.
Yeah, and it's one of those that in this, I think maybe that's some of the cultural shift too, that you've got people that because there's such a groundswell of, hey, this happened to me too,
Yes.
it doesn't feel like such a lonely void.
Yes, I think that's really been helpful. I've certainly seen some women recently who are only willing to say something because of this cultural shift. Otherwise, they would have just said nothing, and sometimes these are really bad situations, really bad things that have happened to these women, and they have not wanted to tell anyone because they wanted to pursue their career, and they felt if they said anything to anyone, they would not be allowed to. And I'm starting to see those women come forward, which I find to be a good thing, because I would like that cultural change to happen. The sad part is, too often what I see is the abuser abuses and sexually harasses many women over a period of years. And so all of those women and all of those families that are affected by that suffer because of this one person. And I think this cultural change is so important because it removes that person from that work environment, and we don't have this sort of ongoing, never-ending, sad saga of people being victimized by the same person.
And, and it's one of those too, if somebody's witnessing something like this that's going on,
Yes.
and the victim's too afraid to come forward, what
Yes.
can that witness do?
So that witness still may be a victim of sexual harassment, and they can report it because it is affecting them, and they can report what they're seeing, and should, I think.
Yeah, and that's the thing I think that we've got with all of this is some people are sometimes thinking, well, am I really being sexually, there's this doubt in their mind, and it's like, look, if you feel uncomfortable, more likely than not, you're being harassed.
Right, it's not okay. So there are things, it's not okay to have somebody constantly making sexual jokes to you or around you. It's not okay for someone to be inappropriately touching you, grabbing you, groping you, bumping up against you. Those things are not okay, and those things normally rise to a violation of the law. It's not okay for someone to even jokingly but semi-seriously want you to do things to keep your job, sexual favors to keep your job. All of those things, not okay.
Yeah, and that's a great place to stop. So thanks for being with us today.
Thank you.
Our time is up for this edition of Law Talk. I would like to thank our guest for taking time out of her busy schedule and being with us and sharing her thoughts and insights. If you would like more information about Law Talk or any other program on Germantown Municipal Television, please refer to our website at www.gmtvonline.org. Thank you for joining us today. Be sure to join us next month for more legal topics. Until then, I am Vince Perryman, and thank you for watching.